The shuttle drifted toward Meridian Station like a silver seed wandering into the mouth of something ancient. From the viewport, Elias Varen watched storm currents swirl across the planet's surface, great spirals of gold and slate blue, twisting like a world trying to remember its own shape. Beautiful, indifferent, too familiar. He straightened his posture out of habit rather than discipline. Years of humanitarian audits across half a dozen empires had trained his body to move correctly long before his mind cared to. Behind him, representatives of the Terran coalition rehearsed diplomatic smiles. Their voices were low, tense, practiced. "Varen," Ambassador Hale murmured, "today is not the day to start a revolution." "I never start them," Elias said without looking away from the viewport. "I just notice when they're already happening." Exactly the problem. Hale adjusted her ceremonial collar. No commentary, no spontaneous moral lectures. Absolutely no questioning royal policy in public. Elias didn't respond. Not because he agreed, but because he had heard this speech on too many worlds already. It never stopped him. It never would. The shuttle touched down with a soft hiss. The airlock cycled open. Warm, perfumed air drifted inside, a deliberate mixture of floral compounds meant to soothe visiting diplomats. It didn't soothe Elias. He always found curated environments suspicious. Then he saw her. Princess Kayla Sarinth stood at the center of the receiving platform, flanked by nobles whose armor was all ornament and no battle scarring. Her own ceremonial armor gleamed with a faint, opalescent glow, white and silver catching the harsh station lights. Her gaze was level, disciplined, impossibly steady. But beneath the perfection of royal composure lay something Elias wasn't expecting: exhaustion, not physical, political, emotional. The exhaustion of someone who had been watched her entire life. The Terran delegation bowed. Elias lowered his head a fraction slower than the others, observing from beneath his lashes the way Kayla's fingers tightened behind her back. A sign of someone who had been lectured about behaving flawlessly. A sign of someone held too tightly by expectation. "Welcome to Meridian," Kayla said, voice measured. "You honor the Dominion with your presence. I am tasked with ensuring your visit proceeds according to tradition." Hale stepped forward with practiced grace. Elias stayed silent until something disrupted the choreography. A young custodian carrying ceremonial banners stumbled. One pole slipped, the heavy structure tilting at an angle that threatened to crash onto the glass tiling. The staffer's eyes went wide with terror. Nobles stared forward without moving because they didn't move for servants. They didn't acknowledge them unless punishing them. Elias moved instantly. He broke formation, crossed 2 strides, caught the collapsing banner with one hand, and supported the custodian's grip with the other. "There you go, thumb under, not over," he murmured. The woman nodded, breath hitching in relief. Elias stepped back into line before anyone could react. Silence rippled outward like a shockwave. Ambassador Hale's face went pale. The nobles looked affronted. The guards touched their weapons as though unsure whether helping a worker constituted an attack. Kayla stared at him, not with offense, with astonishment. Rules had been broken, protocol shattered. And yet Elias looked like someone who had simply fixed a crooked picture frame. The ceremony stumbled onward. Kayla resumed speaking, though something in her voice had changed. Softened, sharpened, he couldn't tell. Her eyes kept drifting to him, subtly, searchingly. When the delegation began walking toward the grand hall, Kayla walked beside her mother, expression carved from stone. But when she glanced back at Elias, he caught the faintest, barely visible curl of curiosity in her lips. Later, as they passed through corridors lined with crystalline reliefs of ancient victories, Elias noticed the workers lowering their heads when royalty passed. Not out of respect, but out of fear. A system too rigid, too polished, too quiet. Kayla noticed him noticing. At the diplomatic wing, she spoke for the first time directly to him. "You stepped out of formation," she said. "Not an accusation, an evaluation. I stepped where I was needed. That is not how things are done here. I'm aware." Her eyes narrowed, but not in anger. "You are either very brave or very foolish. Can't I be both?" For the first time, the corner of her mouth twitched, just enough to suggest the faintest, forbidden spark of amusement. "Your presence," Kayla said quietly, "will be interesting." Elias didn't answer, but he felt it, the shift. The moment something dormant in the Dominion cracked open. A tiny fault line. Kayla Sarinth was not accustomed to being surprised. Her entire upbringing had been crafted to eliminate it. Surprises were weaknesses, vulnerabilities, cracks through which influence could seep. But as she took her place beside the Empress during the morning's diplomatic session, she found her gaze drifting again, and again toward the human who had broken formation without hesitation. Ilias Varen sat with a posture that was almost careless, but his eyes were razor-sharp, tracking details the ministers hoped visitors never noticed. Every time a noble spoke, he watched not the speaker, but the aides behind them. Every time a statistic was presented, he glanced toward the staff along the walls, noting their reactions instead of the numbers. He wasn't observing the performance. He was observing the truth leaking around its edges. Kayla should have ignored him. Her role was to sit silently beside her mother, projecting the image of the Dominion's future, flawless, obedient, composed. A symbol, not a person. But symbols didn't feel curiosity tightening in their chest. Symbols didn't replay a moment where a human had treated a worker with dignity in a hall where nobles considered dignity a resource reserved for themselves. He shouldn't matter. Yet he did. Minister Raloth droned on about productivity quotas in frontier systems, praising increases extracted through structural optimization. Ilias frowned slightly and tapped something into his tablet. Kayla leaned a fraction of an inch toward him, a movement small enough no one else would notice. "You disagree with his assessment," she said quietly. Ilias didn't look up. "I disagree with the way he skipped over the relocation statistics." Kayla blinked. "You noticed that?" "You did." She straightened. The report was deemed accurate. "By those benefiting from it," Ilias replied, tone even but unyielding. "Not by those it affects." Her pulse quickened. The Empress cast a brief, sharp glance in their direction. Kayla fell silent instantly, returning to the rigid stillness expected of her, but the moment lingered. When the session adjourned, nobles clustered around the Empress to offer praise and proposals. Kayla normally moved among them like a ghost, saying little but observing everything. Today, she found herself drifting toward the human instead. He was speaking with one of the junior clerks, a soft-spoken woman who flinched whenever a noble walked past. Ilias listened attentively, nodding as she explained something about supply chains and discrepancies she wasn't supposed to acknowledge. When she finished, he thanked her as though she were an equal, not a tool, not a servant, a person. Kayla approached before she fully decided to. Ilias ended his conversation and looked at her with the same quiet, unguarded focus he gave everyone else. "Your Highness, walk with me," she said. If he was surprised, he hid it well. They moved into a quieter wing of the station, where crystalline windows reflected fractured light across the floors. Kayla kept her hands clasped behind her back, as always. Ilias walked with his hands in his pockets, entirely unbothered by appearances. She envied it more than she'd ever admit. "You observe my ministers more closely than they expect," she said. "I observe everyone that closely. That is unusual, and yet necessary." They passed a group of servants repairing a cracked lighting panel. Kayla's steps remained steady. Ilias slowed, nodded to the workers, offered a small greeting. They relaxed visibly. Kayla hated how foreign that gesture felt here. "You come from a government that values humanitarian ethics," she said. "But the Dominion does not operate under those philosophies." "I'm aware. Then why question everything? Why risk offending those with power?" "Because if power cannot withstand questions," Ilias said, "it shouldn't be trusted." She stopped walking. That sentence shouldn't have hit her as hard as it did. She'd heard thousands of political arguments, speeches, criticisms, most layered with threat or flattery. But his words weren't posturing. They were conviction. And conviction was dangerous. Conviction was contagious. "You speak boldly," Kayla said. "You listen boldly," Ilias countered. Her breath caught. She turned, maintaining the calm exterior drilled into her since childhood. "You misunderstand my role. I observe to ensure stability, not to challenge it." Ilias studied her, not with disrespect, but with the haunting accuracy of someone who saw more than he should. "That's not the whole truth," he said. Kayla's stomach tightened. "Explain." "You see suffering," he said softly. "You see injustices your government pretends don't exist, and you pretend not to see it because seeing it requires responsibility." A slow exhale left her. He wasn't wrong, he wasn't supposed to be able to tell. "When I was 6, Kayla said, voice low, "my tutors told me that a leader must remain untouched by emotion. That compassion clouds judgment. That sympathy destabilizes rule." "Compassion is what makes rule worth having," Ilias said. She almost laughed, almost. "You speak like someone who believes systems can be changed. I speak like someone who's seen them crumble when no one tries." Lightning flickered across the distant atmosphere beyond the window, silent, bright, brief. Kayla felt something inside her shift with equal violence. "What do you want, Elias Varen?" she asked, truthfully. "Understanding," he said. "Because understanding helps me protect people. All people, not just the ones in gold armor. And you would question an empire for that. I would question a universe." Kayla inhaled sharply. For a moment neither spoke. Then she said the words that broke protocol in half. "Meet me in the lower gardens at second bell." Elias crossed his arms, studying her. Why? The lower gardens of Meridian Station were never meant for royalty. They weren't sculpted with crystalline arches or perfumed air processors. They were functional. Humid walkways, dense foliage grown for oxygen regulation, dim amber lights that flickered occasionally because maintenance crews were always understaffed. Kayla had never set foot here, not once in 28 years. When she arrived, dressed not in armor but in a simple dark tunic, the workers she passed froze in shock, unsure whether they should bow, flee, or pretend they hadn't seen her. Kayla felt each reaction like a weight. She had never asked to be feared, yet she had inherited generations of ritual that demanded nothing less. Elias was already sitting on a metal bench beneath a broad-leafed tree, scrolling through charts on his tablet. His posture was relaxed, one leg extended, one arm draped casually across the backrest. Completely at ease in a place she had been taught to avoid. He noticed her only when she approached close enough for her footsteps to break his concentration. "Your Highness," he said, standing automatically. "Sit," Kayla replied. "Formality has no place here." He sat slowly, cautiously, not out of fear, out of curiosity. Kayla remained standing for a moment, studying him the way she would study a puzzle built with the wrong pieces. "You walk through places like this as if they belong to you." "Places like this," Elias said, "belong to the people who work in them. I'm just visiting." Kayla lowered herself onto the bench, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Explain something to me. Why do you speak with servants as though their opinions matter as much as ministers?" "Because they do. That is not how empires function. That's why empires fall." Kayla exhaled slowly. She didn't respond right away. Her mind was trained to process dialogue through layers of politics. Elias' words bypassed all of those layers, slipping directly beneath the armor she had spent her entire life constructing. She folded her hands. "I am the heir to the Dominion. My entire existence has been shaped by duty and precedence. Everyone I speak to carries expectations. Every word is weighed, every silence interpreted." "You sound exhausted." She almost laughed, but it came out as something closer to a sigh. "Exhaustion is a luxury. I am not permitted such indulgence." Elias leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Then tell me what you are permitted." Kayla hesitated. No one had ever asked her that, not because they didn't wonder, but because they didn't care, or care enough to risk asking. "What I am permitted," she said slowly, "is to be a symbol, a flawless demonstration of loyalty to the Empress. I am shown cities from balconies, not streets. I meet citizens selected for their gratitude, not their grievances. And I—" She faltered. Elias waited. "And I have never walked among my people without an escort telling me where to look." Elias didn't look surprised. "That explains a lot." "Does it?" she asked, her voice sharper than intended. "Yes," he said simply. "It explains why you see suffering only in reports, and why it unsettles you when you see it through your own eyes." Kayla stared at him. "You think I am unsettled?" "I think you're waking up." A flush rose to her cheeks before she could suppress it. "You greatly overestimate your influence." "Do I?" His tone wasn't arrogant. It was unbearably gentle, as if he were stating an observable truth rather than claiming credit for it. Kayla stood abruptly and paced a few steps. The garden air felt too thick, too real, too unfiltered. She had spent her life in curated spaces. This one smelled like soil and metal and life. It overwhelmed her. "How do you do that?" she asked. "Do what?" "See people." Elias leaned back against the bench, looking up at the artificial sky panels. "I grew up in a place no one cared about, a mining outpost on the edge of nowhere. My father worked until his lungs collapsed. My mother kept us fed by patching pressure leaks in old domes no one bothered to replace. We survived because people around us paid attention to suffering instead of pretending it wasn't there." Kayla's chest tightened. "I didn't know." "You weren't supposed to." Elias stood and approached her, stopping at a respectful distance. "Empires don't teach their heirs about the people at the bottom of the structure, because once you see them, you can't unsee them." Kayla looked away toward a maintenance worker adjusting irrigation valves. The man glanced nervously in her direction. She stepped closer. "Your work," she said, "maintains oxygen levels for half this station." The man blinked at her, stunned. "Thank you." He stared at her as if she'd spoken an impossible phrase. Then, hesitantly, almost trembling, he bowed, not out of fear, but out of something more fragile: respect. When Kayla turned back to Elias, her heartbeat was uneven. "This is what you do," she said. "You create disorder." "No," Elias corrected softly. "I reveal it." Kayla's composure wavered. She sank back onto the bench. "These systems," she whispered, "they are woven into every part of the Dominion. If I admit they are flawed, if I allow myself to see what you see, then everything I was taught collapses." Elias sat beside her again, closer this time. "Not touching but present. That's called honesty," he said. "It's called treason," she replied. "Sometimes," Elias said, "they're the same thing at the beginning." Kayla's breath trembled, not visibly, but enough for her to feel it. For 28 years, she had lived inside a script written long before she was born. For the first time, she felt the paper tearing. "You asked me why I wanted to meet you," she said. "The truth is, I wanted to understand why news of the Arcus uprising reached Meridian Station long before the official announcement." Kayla felt it before she heard it, an unease in the corridors, hushed conversations between attendants, a tension so thick the air processors couldn't filter it out. When the summons to the High Council arrived, she already knew what the session would demand: crush them, prove strength, restore order. The Dominion's script never changed. She walked into the council chamber wearing full ceremonial armor, though she felt its weight differently today. Not as a symbol of power, but as a reminder of the role she was expected to perform. The Empress sat on her obsidian throne, radiating authority with effortless precision. Ministers gathered around the map projection, blue holographic flames marking battle zones across Arcus. Elias stood at the far edge of the chamber with the Terran delegation, present only because the Empress insisted on transparency. He looked out of place in a room designed to intimidate, but unlike other diplomats, he didn't shrink from it. His gaze was cold, focused, unflinching. Kayla took her place beside her mother. Minister Raloth began the briefing. "Rebels have seized planetary communications, disrupted supply convoys, and declared independence. Their demands are irrelevant. Such insubordination must be extinguished swiftly." "Civilian casualties?" the Empress asked. "Unavoidable," another minister said, "but acceptable." Kayla's jaw tightened. Elias' head jerked toward the table at the word acceptable, horror sharpening his expression. The ministers continued. "We deploy 3 legions," Raloth said. "Bombard strategic zones. Eliminate leadership. Let Arcus be an example." No, the word was soft, but it cut across the chamber like a blade. It came from Elias. Everyone turned. Kayla felt her heart stumble in her chest. Elias stepped forward, ignoring Hale's grip on his arm. "If your plan is civilian slaughter disguised as order, the Terran coalition cannot, and will not, proceed with any alliance." "You overstep," the Empress said, voice dangerously calm. "I'm doing my job," Elias replied. "Protecting lives. If you respond to justified grievances with violence, humanity will not be complicit." The chamber silenced. Ministers exchanged furious looks. Hale closed her eyes in dread. Kayla felt heat spreading across her ribs, not anger, fear. For him, for what the Empress might do, for what she herself was about to do. The Empress leaned forward, her tone frigid. "Human, you forget your place. This is a Dominion matter." "No," Elias said. "This is a humanitarian matter, and you are discussing mass punishment for people begging to be heard." Kayla's throat tightened. His words struck the council like lightning. Truth always did. The Empress rose, every inch a sovereign forged from centuries of absolute rule. "You will withdraw your criticism, or your delegation will be escorted off-world." Elias didn't flinch. "Then escort us." Kayla felt something inside her break open. Pain, admiration, terror, clarity. Elias wasn't merely brave. He was principled, and principles in this room were treated like crimes. She stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "Mother." The Empress turned slowly. "Kayla." "Elias speaks truth." Shock rippled across the chamber. Ministers stiffened. Hale inhaled sharply. Elias' eyes widened in silent disbelief. Kayla continued, louder, stronger. "The uprising on Arcus is not sudden. It is consequence. Years of ignored petitions, forced relocation, resource extraction, suffering hidden beneath reports you approve without reading." "Careful," the Empress warned. Kayla didn't stop. Couldn't. If we respond with military force, we prove exactly what Arques claims, that we are an empire that punishes honesty and rewards submission. Murmurs rose. A few ministers touched their comms in alarm. The Empress descended from the throne, face carved in stone. You would shame your own empire in front of foreigners. I would tell the truth, Kayla said, and you would break with your Empress. I would break with any power that demands silence in exchange for obedience. The chamber erupted, shouts, accusations, gasps. Kayla didn't look away. She met her mother's gaze directly, feeling the weight of centuries pressing against her, and for the first time she pushed back. The Empress's voice dropped to a vicious whisper. You jeopardize everything your lineage built. No, Kayla said. You jeopardize it by clinging to systems that exploit those we claim to protect. The Empress lifted her chin. Then speak your solution if you are so wise. Kayla turned toward the projection of Arques. The blue flames flickered. Negotiation, she said. Address grievances, reform policies, establish representation. Earn loyalty instead of forcing it. If the Dominion cannot evolve, it will fracture. There it was, the truth she had feared all her life, spoken at last. The room spiraled into chaos, but Kayla looked only at Elias. His expression was not triumphant, not self-righteous. It was relief, and something softer, something like certainty that she had. Kayla found Elias in the Hall of Glass, a long corridor lined with transparent panels overlooking Meridian's lower atmosphere. The sky beyond churned with pale storms, scattering silver light across the floor. He was packing his small travel case, movements quick and mechanical like a man preparing for exile rather than departure. He didn't hear her approach. You're leaving, she said. Elias froze. Slowly he turned toward her. His expression was not angry, not afraid, just tired. A deep, heavy tiredness belonging to someone who had carried principles through too many hostile rooms. I don't have a choice, he said quietly. Your council saw my objection as an insult. The Empress saw it as a threat. Ambassador Hale has orders to remove me before I cause further disruption. Kayla stepped closer. You didn't cause disruption, you told the truth. Which is the fastest way to get expelled from most governments, Elias said wryly. He zipped his case shut. Including yours. Something inside Kayla twisted painfully. I spoke for you, she said, in front of the entire council. And you might pay for that, Elias said, in ways I can't protect you from. His concern should have warmed her. Instead, it hurt. I didn't speak for you, she corrected, surprising even herself. I spoke because what you said broke open something I had no right to ignore. Elias stared at her for a long moment. The storms reflected faintly in his eyes, turning them into shifting silver. I didn't want to drag you into this, he said. You didn't drag me anywhere, Kayla replied. You held up a mirror, I chose to look. She stepped beside him, standing close enough to see the tension in his shoulders. Your words today, they have changed everything. The council will fracture. The nobles will rage. My mother will demand a public retraction. So will you retract? Elias asked softly. Kayla swallowed. No. Silence stretched between them, charged, trembling, fragile. Elias exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight he'd been carrying for years. Kayla, I didn't expect you to stand with me. I didn't stand with you, she said. I stood with truth. You merely reminded me what truth looks like. He almost smiled, almost. You make it sound noble. It isn't noble, Kayla said. It's terrifying. She turned toward the panoramic glass, watching the storms churn over the world below. My entire life has been constructed around obedience, around tradition, around pretending I don't see what I see. When you questioned the council, it was as if you stepped into a room where everyone had agreed to speak lies and refused to participate. That's my entire job, Elias said, shrugging lightly. Being the inconvenient person who says, we shouldn't pretend this is fine. Kayla's voice softened. You weren't inconvenient, you were necessary. Elias looked down, the muscles in his jaw tightening. Kayla, I meant what I said in there. If your empire commits violence against Arques, I can't be part of an alliance. I can't stand beside systems that kill their own people. His conviction hit her with the force of a shockwave, because it wasn't arrogance, it was moral clarity. Something Kayla had rarely seen in nobles, generals, or ministers. Do you know, Kayla said, that you are the first person in my life who has spoken to me without fear of my title? Because your title doesn't define you, Elias said simply. And if everyone else thinks it does, that's their limitation, not yours. She turned fully toward him now. Elias, she whispered, I have never been seen the way you see me. He inhaled sharply. Then he stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that she felt the warmth of him. Kayla, I didn't come here to change you, or your empire. I came here because my job requires honesty, even when it burns bridges. You didn't burn a bridge, Kayla said. You illuminated one. For the first time, Elias looked uncertain. Kayla, your vow. She froze, her vow. The sacred oath she swore at 25 to avoid political marriage, to reject being traded like a resource. For years, nobles had mocked her, her mother had raged, her council had strategized ways to break it. And Elias was the first person who never asked about it. What about it? Kayla said. You swore never to marry, Elias said carefully. Never to let your life become a transaction. Kayla's throat warmed. My vow was not against companionship, it was against chains disguised as alliances. Elias blinked. So it's not absolute. It is my choice, she said, not my sentence. He looked away, exhaling. I'm leaving the station within the hour. I know, and I may never be allowed back. I know. And even if you manage to push reforms, it will take years. Your own mother might remove you from succession for siding with me today. Kayla nodded once. I know all of this. Elias met her gaze again, and this time it was not just principle or honesty she saw in him. It was fear. Fear that he mattered to her. Fear that she mattered to him. Fear that he was about to walk away before either of them was ready. Kayla, he said quietly, what do you want from me? Her answer rose before she could stop it. I want you to stay. She had never spoken words that dangerous in her life. Elias' breath caught. For one trembling second, the storms outside seemed to still. I can't stay, he whispered. They'll exile the entire delegation because of me. Then let me come with you. Elias stepped back like she'd struck him. Kayla, no. You can't leave the Dominion, you can't abandon your people, and you can't sacrifice your future because of me. I'm not sacrificing anything, she said. For the first time in my life, I would be choosing. Elias shut his eyes as if the pain of that truth was too sharp to face. You don't understand what that would cost. I do, Kayla said, and yet. She stepped closer. I am no longer afraid. Elias opened his eyes, filled with conflict, longing, refusal, and something that looked dangerously like hope. I'm going to fix what I can. Months passed, but the echo of that council chamber moment, Kayla's defiance, Elias' truth, the Empress's fury, never faded. It spread through the Dominion like a whispered spark. Some tried to extinguish it, others hid it. A few dared to nurture it. Kayla became the center of a political storm that refused to break. Noble houses demanded discipline. Ministers demanded her silence. Her mother demanded obedience. But the people, the workers, soldiers, migrants, teachers began to watch her differently. Hopefully, cautiously, quietly. Someone was finally saying aloud what they had lived in silence. Kayla spent those months traveling to systems she had once seen only in reports. Arcus, Lornia, Vekar Prime, worlds scarred by integration policies she now refused to defend. She didn't hide behind protocol, she listened. She stood in factories choked by fumes, mining rings stripped bare, cultural centers hollowed by forced standardization. People were shocked at first. Royals did not walk among them. Royals did not ask questions. Kayla broke every rule she had once upheld. At night, she drafted reform proposals, abolish relocation quotas, redistribute taxation, dismantle exploitative noble monopolies, create citizen councils. She fought through every meeting, every blockade of tradition, every threat disguised as advice. And through it all, Elias' voice haunted her. Start by choosing to see. She saw everything now. But she also felt everything. The cost, the loneliness, the weight of stepping into a role she had never been allowed to shape. And in the quiet moments when her chambers finally emptied and her armor finally loosened, she allowed herself one forbidden thought. Does he still think about me? Meanwhile, across the stars, Elias worked from humanity's side, writing reports that spared no detail, publishing accounts of Dominion exploitation, facing political backlash from Terran officials who preferred convenient partnerships over moral discomfort. He was removed from assignments, then reinstated, then nearly dismissed, but he kept pushing. His reports reached Arcus rebels, his recommendations shaped Terran negotiations. His name became tied to Dominion reform efforts, even after he had left Meridian. And when asked why he was fighting for a foreign empire's citizens, Elias always said the same thing. Because someone on the inside is fighting too. 6 months after the council confrontation, the Dominion entered its most significant reform era in centuries. Not because the nobles supported it. They resisted every step. But because the Empress, boxed in by pressure from citizens and Terran sanctions, was forced to accept changes to preserve stability. Kayla presented each reform personally. She made herself impossible to ignore. Some nobles called her a traitor. Some called her idealistic. Some feared her. Many hated her. But the people, the ones she listened to, the ones she had once been shielded from, began leaving her messages wherever she traveled. Small things. Ribbons, carved tokens, anonymous notes saying thank you. She kept everyone. And yet something remained unfinished. A choice, not about policy or duty, but about herself, about the vow that had shaped her life, and the man who had reshaped its meaning. The day the final reform bill passed, Kayla stood on the balcony of Meridian Station, the same one where she had once greeted the Terran delegation. Her armor was gone, her ceremonial robes abandoned. She wore simple clothing, the kind Elias had once said made her look more like a person than a symbol. For the first time in years, Kayla felt something unfamiliar, lightness, but it was incomplete. A chime sounded behind her. Princess Sarinth, a guard announced. A Terran vessel has arrived requesting private audience, diplomatic clearance confirmed. Her heart stopped. She didn't breathe until she was inside the docking hall, standing alone as the shuttle ramp lowered. The man who stepped out looked the same and yet different, more tired, more grounded, more certain. The storms of Meridian reflected off the metal behind him, painting faint silver across his jacket. Elias, Kayla whispered. He stopped a few steps away, as if unsure whether he was allowed to move closer. I heard about the reforms, he said softly, about everything you've done. You helped me see, she said, and I didn't want to see it alone. Elias' gaze softened, grief and pride mixing into something unbearably human. Kayla, I wasn't sure you'd ever want to see me again, after everything it cost you. It didn't cost me, she said. It changed me. She stepped closer. He didn't move, breath caught in his chest. Elias, she said quietly, my vow was against becoming a bargaining chip, against marriages forged in chains, against alliances built from obedience. He swallowed, and now. Now, Kayla said, you are the first person I have ever met who sees me as someone who can choose. Silence settled around them, alive, trembling, electric. Elias finally spoke. What do you choose? Kayla reached out her hand, stopping just shy of his. I choose to build something with you, not because I must, not because tradition demands it, but because every part of me wants to. Elias let out a slow, shuddering breath, one he had been holding since the day he left. Then the vow isn't broken, he said.
Oh. Ok, je comprends. Ouais, mais là, c'est parce que c'est sûr. Avez-vous un miroir? Merci. Tu comprends? En vrai, elle me ferait bien, c'est juste que là, j'ai des lulus, genre.
Ben, c'est vraiment ça, c'est large pour ta tête. Mais c'est cute. Fais voir? Guys, on pense quoi? Yes, yes, queen. Let's go. K-pop queen.
Tu leur donnes. Ils vont cute. En vrai, celle-là, je la trouve cute. Mais tu sais, c'est parce que là, j'ai des lulus.
W, tu vois, les gens...
Ils disent quoi? Ils disent que ça va bien?
2016 vibe, W, elle a combien? Blanche de même, tu vas sortir du magasin puis elle va être sale. C'est pas ça la question.
Bonjour, vous allez bien?
Bonjour.
Enchantée.
Enchanté.
Lexa.
Vous êtes de France ou de Québec?
Devinez.
Je ne peux pas vous dire que vous êtes seulement très belle.
Oh, mais c'est que c'est flatteur. Merci beaucoup. Je suis de
rien.
Québec.
Enchantée.
Merci,
Très
enchantée.
gentille. Et j'aime bien ce que j'aime bien votre certaines activités, certaines que vous faites.
Pour vrai?
Oui.
Mais merci
Parce que
beaucoup.
vous avez bien dansé.
Oh, merci!
Une danseuse!
Merci,
Lexa danseuse,
une
guys.
danseuse!
Ouh là
Alors,
là.
est-ce que tu m'offres la casquette, monsieur? Non, mais là, lui, il est en arrière.
Star foulard.
Non, en vrai, la casquette est trop baigneuse, mais...
Double Riz.
Mais est-ce que c'est trop long? Tu sais,
W chroma pour le sub.
Si elle est large, tu peux la fixer plus.
mais est-ce qu'elle me va bien, celle-là?
C'est la plus belle chapeau que j'en ai eu.
Ah!
Ça veut dire que tu dois apprendre.
Ah.
Oui, c'est nouveau ça. Et
Ouais.
Ça fait juste 2 semaines dans le
Que vous
marché.
les avez?
Comment?
Ça fait juste 2 semaines qu'ils
Oui,
sont
oui,
là?
c'est nouveau ça.
Mmh!
Et c'est du couleur très beau.
Vous êtes bon vendeur.
Merci, c'est à cause de vous. Parce que le client, quand il vient chez moi, c'est lui qui me préoccupe.
Ah,
Et
c'est
toujours,
ça.
je veux lui faire un bon service.
C'est très bon, ça.
Merci. Vous êtes dans quel domaine?
L'entertainment. Je divertis.